All right, welcome back to Make Them Famous, the podcast where we try to dive into partnerships, partner enablement, and figure out exactly what makes the best programs out there work. In this episode, I wanted to take a second to record something that I found super interesting, a post from our friend Will Taylor here on LinkedIn. Starting a good conversation that I wrote an article around. If you want to read the article, feel free to do that. But I wanted to open up this discussion and kind of get my thoughts out on the podcast for all of you, in case you didn't see the article. But Will asked, is it possible to grow your company with 100% partner-led approach? Now, that in itself is an interesting question. But as I was responding to that, I sort of went down a little bit of a rabbit hole on definitions and really what partner-led means, which first you have to answer the question, what is a partnership and what is just typical marketing and typical sales? So I published this article. If you're just listening, I was showing on screen what the post looked like. So don't worry about it. You don't need to look at it. But I published this article and I started with first, let's dive into partnerships for a second and figure out, are we taking credit for a typical marketing or sales or product activity as the partnership team? Assuming that you're on the partnership team, maybe you're a CEO or CRO listening, and you're more interested in just what do you define as a partnership activity versus what is a typical product sales or marketing activity. And I have a couple examples. Now, if I build an integration to HubSpot, am I now partners with HubSpot? I think we'd all agree, no. An integration is par for the course. It is what we have to do as SaaS companies just to succeed. For the most part, there's a couple minor edge cases, but for the most part, if you do not have integrations with the top ecosystems that your customers are also using, you probably won't succeed. So when I build that integration, I think we all agree that answer is no. Partnerships, when an integration, if we're talking about that example, when it becomes a partner activity, in my opinion, again, is when both parties are putting in effort, resources, and have KPIs to track, both parties, around that integration. So again, in order for a typical integration to become a partnership, both parties need to develop and incorporate and use resources, time, and KPIs around that partnership, that integration that is now quote unquote partnership. So you're kind of moving over to the other side of a bridge from a typical product endeavor to now a partnership endeavor. It is up to the partnership team to expand on that, whatever it is, in this case, an integration. Now let's go to the marketing side of the equation. Now, if me, VP of marketing at XYZ company, runs a webinar series and invites top solutions partners, top agencies, let's call them agencies or consultancies, to those webinars, or even just integration partners, is that a marketing activity or is that a partnership activity? Again, marketing develops the idea for a webinar series and invites agencies, consultants to that webinar series. Again, I would argue no. And one of the reasons why I would argue no to that is because, back to our original definition, both parties are not developing KPIs around that series. It's very much my company develops the series. We have KPIs around that series. We just bring third parties into that series. Now, the marketing team versus the partnership team, they would obviously want to jock for position for the results of that series, because if it's successful, it should bring in actual partners and we want to replicate it and we want to get budget for it, and it makes sense. But if we're honest with ourselves, being partnerships led, or in Will's term, partner led, you want to understand, okay, well, what is typical and what is actual partnership led? So I think it's very important to kind of delineate what is typical versus what is a partnership campaign. I'll give you one more example. One more example is on the affiliate side. If you're listening to this podcast for a while or following me or in our newsletter subscription, you'll probably hear me talk about this word affiliate as not being a partnership. If you have an affiliate, by definition, they are not a partner. They're just an affiliate. An affiliate can also be a partner. Partner can also be an affiliate. A good example of an affiliate is a YouTuber that has a tracked link in one of their top ranking YouTube videos for my product. I am tracking that. I'm sending out automated payments and they keep the link in place. Everybody's happy. Is that a partner? No. And back in my former career as VP of marketing for marketplaces and SaaS, my marketing team owned the affiliate campaigns. We own the affiliate tracking solution. We had the affiliate marketing. It's also why it's called affiliate marketing. It is very much a marketing endeavor. We had those KPIs. We had that budget. We owned the affiliates, not the partnership team. So it's very confusing when I got into partnerships, why partnerships and partner teams were all of a sudden kind of doing co-marketing, not the marketing team. And I think this is where it becomes difficult for a CEO or CRO to understand is, and really just lay out the tracks and make sure everybody's copacetic is, okay, well, if we're going to run a webinar series, back to that example, and put budget and time and effort, is that something that the partnership team owns or not? And I think if I'm putting myself into the shoes of the apps that struggle with getting partners into content, I'm guessing this is why. And honestly, I haven't heard a lot about this sort of friction point. I just know that they get roadblocks from the marketing team when they go to marketing with, we want to do this blank, blank, blank with partners, whatever it is. They get doors in their face, not realistically, but, imaginary doors in their face. So if I were to put myself in the shoes of the marketing manager, and if my CEO or CMO or whoever told me that, okay, well, if the content or webinar or podcast includes solutions providers, agencies, consultants, or integration partner managers of ours, it is a partner manager activity. They own that. But partner teams don't really get the resources on the creative side or the budget to do these things. So they inevitably have to go back to marketing and say, hey, we want to put together this webinar series with partners. And then the marketing team is sitting there saying, well, if I give you some of my budget and resources, I should be allowed to report on that KPI, the success of that marketing endeavor. But that KPI, that success or failure could be attributed solely to the partner team. So then why would the marketing team put themselves out there? I wouldn't. So that makes sense. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is this. We can't give partnerships the credit for every marketing and product initiative just because there was a third party involved. I think we should all agree with that. Okay, and this is important. Will did rebut that statement that I just made, where I suggest teams delineate any third-party activity from being a partnerships activity to first and foremost not being until it meets some criteria. My criteria is both parties need to devote resources and have KPIs that they're tracking around that endeavor in order for that endeavor to be a partnerships endeavor. Will says, one note, I would argue that any activity with a third party should be considered a partnership in some form, meaning Why do any one-off? Why do any one-off when you could create a longer term relationship? I agree with that. Why would you do a one-off instead of focusing on long term? But again, if I don't have a KPI related to that endeavor, if that's not a focus of mine, I'm not going to care about a long term. I'm just going to be either doing that thing because I like you or because maybe it gives me something, but that specific type of endeavor, I don't have a KPI for it. So I don't consider you a partner, but if you consider me a partner and I don't consider you a partner, I would argue we're not partners. You mentioned, Will goes on to say, you mentioned resources exchanging hands, which I agree with. And we know that doesn't really need to be monetary. But let's say I am a sales tech company and I do something with Gong. If I don't see it as a long-term relationship, I venture to say that it would be doing the engagement a disservice from a business perspective, i.e., if I perceive this third-party engagement as a one-off, then I won't necessarily honor it with the same process, communication, et cetera. TLDR, short-term third-party engagements have less business impact. I agree with that, of course, but I have to stress to the people in Will's corner, it's not up to you to have a long-term relationship with Gong. Gong, especially, big company. I mean, they are doing a lot. I'm just Partnerhub. If I build an integration with Gong, yeah, my intention is to make it as successful as possible. But Gong isn't paying attention to me. They're not trying to work with me. So how can I call them a partner of mine? They don't know I exist. My response to Will's response is, yes, intentions are always to grow the relationship. But if every third party included is a partner, then there's no argument that partnerships led is not only the most impactful, it would be all there is. So I'm basically saying, if what you're saying, Will, is correct, or at least if anyone believes that, then everything the company is doing is partnerships led, because nothing is without a third party, really, if you think about it. At least the better of the version. If I put out a piece of content, it's just me talking about this topic on a podcast, this podcast. Perfect. If it's just me talking about it, maybe I'll get some listeners. Maybe they'll agree, maybe they'll disagree. But if I brought somebody onto this show right now with me to discuss this topic, which I may reach out to Will before I publish this and see if he's willing to come on, chances of you listening to it go way up. So the better version of that relationship, or that content, that activity, is with a third party. But again, all I'm doing is creating better content. Does that mean the person I brought on is a partner and therefore that content becomes a partnership endeavor? I'd argue no, not at all. Okay, I digress. Back to my answer. Can you build a great company with a 100% partner-led approach? A couple of caveats before I read my response. In my response, I did not factor in time frame. This is related to SaaS only. I'm not referring to every category or partnership type in this response. I'm going to remove integrations/tech partnerships from this context because I believe integrations are par for the course, so to speak. If you want to be a SaaS product in today's world, you have to have integrations. Also, unless both companies are spending resources on the integration, it's not a partnership. I spent 4 months of resources integrating Partnerhub with top CRMs and Slack. That does not mean I am now a HubSpot partner or Salesforce partner or Slack partner. Now, this is the same with cloud marketplaces. If you got a listing in a cloud marketplace, you're either buying your spot, you've got a free spot, and they want you to pay for it eventually. G2 crowd, think about that. Or you integrated with their product, which qualifies you to be in that app marketplace. And this is part of the problem, I think, too. If I build an integration with HubSpot, they list me in their, I think, ecosystems.hubspot or whatever it is. It's their app marketplace. Somewhere on that page, I think the word partner exists. These are our solution partners and these are our integration partners. Now, because HubSpot has integration partners on a page and then I'm listed there, that could be your argument. I think it's a weak argument, but I think that's where part of the problem comes in. Now, lastly, another caveat before I read my response to this question is affiliate marketing is just that. It's marketing, allowing bloggers or influencers to make money sharing your links. It's just marketing. It's not a partnership. Regardless of whether you're B2B SaaS using PartnerStack to manage B2B affiliates or Referral Sasquatch is another B2B affiliate tracking solution. It's not a partnership scenario. Okay, those are my 5 caveats. Now, my short response to Will was first to reframe the question a little bit because it's a little too broad, too difficult to answer the way it was phrased. But I argued that he should rephrase it to say, which of the blank-led growth strategies could build the largest tech organization if done exclusively? Partnerships-led, product-led, sales and marketing-led, those 3. So starting with product-led, PLG, the big buzzword in SaaS the last 5 years. PLG. I think it's great to get you to the first 10 million with a very lean team, low fundraising, build a great product like a great Shopify app, allow your product to speak for itself, get a lot of reviews, a lot of shares, a lot of product-led features that enable invites, etc. Now it's you and a couple co-founders, a couple CS people, and engineers. You don't have a marketing team. You definitely don't have a partnership team. You get to 10 million. Now, at that 10 million threshold, maybe before, it starts to become difficult to deploy new features as fast. You have to shift focus to compliance and security and stability, and you can't get more features to do the work of the development of the inbound, and you want to grow just as fast. So at that point, it becomes a product marketing scenario where you need to hire and develop a marketing team, possibly a sales team. If you want to go further, which is up market, then you enter the sales and marketing led kind of requirement or need in order to keep the growth going. This is typical again. So again, product led gets you the first however many million. You reach that sort of plateau, got to get into product marketing. That means marketing team. Investors get on your back about margins and growth, revenue, which forces you to kind of launch an enterprise tier or go up market. And that means sales. Then you hire a sales team and you develop a sales channel. This is a good example of, Gong. Back to Will's example of Gong as a partner. Gong is a perfect example. They were in this area of about 100 million ARR in 2020. And I was actually knocking on their door about getting into partnerships and partner programs and stuff we were doing. I don't think Partnerhub was out yet. And they were telling me, no, we're sales focused right now. We're not working with channel partners yet. Maybe next year, something like that. So they were at 100 million ARR with no focus in channel partnerships. And then what I believe happens at this stage of a biggish company, still technically mid-market, I guess, whatever you want to call it, but kind of a startup as well, just a very profitable startup. They start to run into competition constraints. They start to run into CS constraints where they have a lot of users and customers, and The implementations are a lot stickier, and they can't really hire enough CS reps to support them. And they need more retention, and they have to start working with solutions providers, consultants. They're already seeing consultants in the implementations. Think heavy implementation, Gong, Salesforce, multiple hundreds of, sometimes hundreds or thousands of account executives and SDRs needing to work around this implementation. They're going to include multiple consultants, sometimes at least an agency, Salesforce solutions partner. Now, what if that Salesforce partner gets hired to do this big, implementation of Gong in this case, but the real implementation is, call tracking and automated XYZ with CRM, and the Salesforce consultant gets there and they're like, why are you implementing Gong? We have this other provider right here, competitor of Gong, fill in the gap. And we strongly suggest going that direction. Gong loses the deal. It's a big deal. The company doesn't really care what product. They just want the result is all they want. So they go with whatever their current agency solution partner that's been with them for years, did the Salesforce implementation, suggests. So I think they run into those walls, the lack of ability to support the customers in the way they need, competition from the solution partners that are entering the deals already. And they say, okay, now's the time. We've got the money. We need to grow, and we need to keep our margins. So we don't want to hire one CS rep for every blank number of customers. We want to keep that number relatively low. So solutions partners, we don't pay them. Maybe they get some commission in some circumstances, but we don't need to. We just need to enable them in some way and make sure that they are getting something back from our ecosystem, usually referrals, at least traffic and conversions, and some other incentives in there. So they launch a partnership program. Okay, so that's your typical small stage product-led, reach the constraints that endeavor, that strategy inevitably will reach, have to hire product marketing, have to hire sales in order to satisfy investors, etc. And then they get to another 20, 40, 50, 100 million, and they reach the constraints that I mentioned and have to go partnership. So now we're on partnerships-led growth. I think we all agree that doing stuff with more individuals involved should, if done correctly, be more efficient, meaning I'm not bearing all the costs, and should be more scalable in the sense that it can reach more individuals if done correctly again. So I think we all agree that. Now, if we go back to my examples and we put the ceiling, quote unquote ceiling, on how far can a product-led only, meaning you don't go into the marketing and sales, just product-led, I would say typical SaaS ceiling of product-led, 10 million AR. Sales and marketing led, you hire a sales team, do a bunch of marketing, budgets, obviously, what it is, but let's say average ceiling. I'd say you could get to the Gong levels, 100 million. Gong would probably love to have not had a partnership operation, but they had to. I think they had to. Now you're at 100 million. Now, again, I'm not including integrations or affiliates in the strategy. So for partner only, meaning all the content you put out, all the integrations are mutual, and you're doing a lot of work around them, and you're kind of going deep with those and wide, and you're really working with partnerships in all facets of the business, partners from day one. I would agree, for partnerships led only is the only function that can surpass the 100 million. And that's where you see the Microsofts and the Intels and the Salesforces of the world have these giant companies built on these giant channel programs. That's how they started. That's how they went to market, and they knew that that was what they had to do from day one. HubSpot actually didn't. They implemented their channel program, I think, maybe even post IPO. No, I think it was pre-IPO. I can't remember, but there's some content with Pete Caputo about that we did before. But had HubSpot launched with a loose but there partner program. Some could argue IPO sooner. Some could argue bigger. They're now competing with Salesforce on the CRM side. Maybe some would argue they would have done that sooner. But at least now that they do have partnerships, and they're very, I think, dependent and relying on partnerships for 60% of their revenue, maybe more, they're going to continue to surpass and continue to grow. And their partners are doing a lot of the building app ecosystem now, their operations hub for them. So back to just the summary of all this, if you've toned out for the last 10, 15 minutes. Is partnerships-led growth the only viable, scalable strategy? No. Is it the one that, when done only, could take you the furthest? I'd say yes. And then the biggest point out of this whole conversation is we can't give partnerships credit for every marketing and product initiative just because there was a third party involved. Number two, most of what we call partnership strategy has been done by marketing teams for decades. We're only now naming it partnerships led. Just because the partner team put on that webinar with Strategic Alliance does not mean it wasn't standard or marketing 101, pulling in others to reach more audiences and to increase trust of the post. Number three, I believe it's a race to the middle if we in partnerships world try to rebrand everything that's been going on prior to our team being developed as partnership strategy. I think that causes some of the ruffled feathers and some of the friction between teams, is that sort of now that's ours conversation. So get creative, try to do more with the relationships that you have as a company, not a partnership yet, it's a relationship, and make it into a partnership so that no other department, marketing, sales, product, would argue you when you say, this is what it was before partnerships. This is what we did to that relationship to make it turn into a partnership. And now here's all the cool stuff that we all got out of it because we transformed it from a relationship to a partnership. Hope you like that. Anyways, subscribe, like, comment, share. Alex@partnerprograms.io if you have any feedback, and we hope you continue listening.